Hey, super glad that you're checking out this video. My name is Lucah, and my area of expertise is in designing brand messaging that attracts more of the right customers and implementing online marketing strategies that are effective, simplistic, and profitable, not just revenue-based. The way I like to do that is through optimization. So I'm going to go over the 4 areas that I like to optimize within a business so that you can optimize them in the same way and essentially be more profitable, increase your revenue, attract more customers, differentiate your brand. So here we go. So firstly, what is optimization? So optimization is an act, process, or methodology of making something as functional or effective as possible. When we talk about brand, when we talk about marketing, these aren't just one-time fix-all situations. These are things that you will continuously tweak until you get what you want. With a lot of the people that I work with, there's either marketing going out that's ineffective, they're wasting ad spend, their messaging isn't tight, their creative isn't differentiated, and overall they are slowing themselves down because of the way they're thinking about their online marketing and the way they're thinking about these optimizations that I'm going to go over right now. So the 4 are brand, marketing, advertising, and sales. Let's start first with brand. I was a Facebook advertiser for a number of years. That was my first vertical into the online space. But the reason that I started to become more of a brand strategist is because I would notice that the ads that I was running, the strategy was the same, but the results were vastly different. And I started to realize that branding has never been more important. And when I say brand and branding, you probably have an idea in your head of the logo and the visuals. And that is a part of branding, but it is not brand as a concept. It's not brand as a phenomenon. And so the areas that I like to optimize in someone's brand, or that I see is missing and why they're not attracting the customers they want to attract, or they're just not growing at the rate they want to be growing, is first due to strategy. So strategy can be misunderstood. You can be successful without strategy at all. But I would say that it's becoming more and more crucial. You can't just jump into a business model or jump into a product without a strategy. It's going to be challenging unless you're running a strategy and you don't even know that you are, which happens. But the main point of strategy is it gives you direction. It gives you creative direction, it gives you marketing and advertising direction, and generally it gives direction for your brand. Strategy is about being different. It's about figuring out how you can strategically position yourself in a space by asking yourself the fundamental question, what are we trying to do here? And why are we doing it? This isn't a customer-facing exercise. This is a purely internal question. Now, the second piece of this that's vitally important is story. Story is when you take what you understand of your strategy and turn it into a narrative, a brand narrative. Now, this isn't an origin story of the company. This isn't the founder story. This is a brand story. It is the communication of the transformation via the creative, the copy. It bleeds into everything, all of your visual identity, turning it into an understanding that your customer is the hero of the story and that you as the company are facilitating that transformation. This needs to be clear in the copy. It needs to be clear on the site. It needs to be clear in the images, on the social. That is the through line. If your business was like a shish kebab, the stick is the brand and it is the thread that you put everything on. And the best way to start building a brand story is to ask yourself, who do our customers want to be? How do they want to feel? For instance, when you look at Apple's brand story, I used to work at Apple for a number of years. It was like one of my favorite jobs that I ever had. What Apple wants in its story, it wants to empower people to feel more creative, to be more independent, to value aesthetics, to find joy in what they do. And if you think back to the beginning of that company, this was an incredibly revolutionary idea. Now in the computer space, it's a little bit more common because, again, at that time with IBM was not telling that story. And then hence that incredible ad from 1984 where the woman came with the sledgehammer and broke the screen with all the drones. That's the story that they're saying. They're saying we are going to take over the monotonous, boring, nerdy, techie vibe, and we are going to inject creativity into it, and we're going to help you do that. And that thrust them into a narrative that was incredibly compelling. And you don't need to have it be that big, but you should get more story-centric in everything that you do. And the last brand optimization I like to look at with people is their visual identity. So the visual identity is logos, the colors, the fonts, mini brand guides, brand guidelines that express how we show up, the visual references, the textures, the imagery that help tell this story and that help deliver on the strategy. A lot of the time, you don't need a full visual rebrand, but sometimes you do. But I would recommend not going into a visual rebrand unless you understand both your strategy and your story. And then once you do, you can look and say, do our visuals line up with that? Are our visuals an extension of this story? Are they an extension of what the brand stands for? Are they an extension of how we're trying to communicate? If they're not, that's when you go back and say, yes, we need to redo the logo. We need to redo the word mark. We need to figure out a new font. We need to make sure that these are not in opposition, because a lot of the time they are. So those are the 3 optimizations of brand that I suggest you start developing. So here's the second optimization that I look at, and it is marketing. So this is a classic funnel. You've got your cold, you've got your warm, and then you have the bottom. So when I start working with somebody, I like to ask them how they're running their funnel right now. We look at the various touch points, and then we figure out what we need to do in order to, A, get more people to go to the bottom. And you may have a few funnels within the business. Usually there's one overarching one, and then there might be some subcategories. And then also, how do we get more people in the top? You can't have more people in the bottom without more people in the top. And over the years, I've found that the best way to not just increase revenue, but to increase profitability is you've really got 2 funnels you need to focus on. You've got your front end funnel, and then you've got your back end funnel. So the front end funnel, usually right now we're looking at social media, like a Facebook, an Instagram, or a TikTok. It depends what kind of business you have. Not all platforms are created equal. You can be on all of them, but figuring out how to communicate your story on every single platform can be a challenge. So I usually recommend that people start with the one that is most in alignment with their audience, that's easiest for them to tell stories with the resources that they have, and then just focus on doing that one as much as possible. So that should lead people in the top, and it also will keep warm audiences warm, because people will follow you and then they continue to see your stuff, which allows you to stay top of mind, and you just have that mind share. There's also things like PR, events. One of the main things in marketing is actually looking at who that target demographic is, both from a psychographic perspective, which leads into your brand and how that communicates, and then also from a demographic perspective, which is like, age, location, gender, income, things like that. They used to say that the main 4 P's of marketing was product, place, price, and promotion. Now, I would say that price is between marketing and sales, so we'll talk about that in a second. And I would say that promotion is between marketing and advertising. Place, I would say, is the internet. It used to be like, okay, the physical location of your brick and mortar, let's say, which is still valuable and is still true. And when I see a place that is not being used and it's up for lease, I start thinking of ideas just naturally, like what could go there and what would be good, but also what should not go there. And when I see a type of business set up and I know for sure the wrong location, I feel for them because they didn't consider this in their marketing. That place is a very important element. And then, of course, product. The reason that product is under marketing is because you got to make sure that your target market and your target product fit. And it can take some time to come up with product market fit, but ultimately it does fall into your marketing, because you look out at the market and you think, oh, these are all the products and this is the product that we're in. But the mistake people make is they think that they need to market exactly like other people who sell the same product, and you don't. Now, back to this funnel thing. Back end is like, how do you re-engage people? How do you continue to speak to people so that you can build a retention funnel? Things like email. Obviously, social kind of falls on both sides, but mostly people are always looking at how do we get more cold traffic, and it's not always about cold traffic. Now, if you're very small and just starting out, you may not have a huge data pool to pull from, but at the same time, you need to be thinking slightly ahead to say, okay, I can't just always be focused on first-time buyers. We need to figure out where we're losing people in the funnel, where are the holes in this funnel, and that's where backend comes in. Things to continue to deliver your story, because it is an area where I find people get very confused. There's a lot of complexity and there's not a lot of clarity. So at this stage, the optimization you want to make is map out the funnel. Map it out from a front-end perspective, map it out from a back-end perspective, keep it as simple as possible, and then we can move on to the next part, which is advertising. So the core of advertising is your creative. It's your content. It's what you're putting out there. It's the images. It's the videos. Now, there's two types of messaging that you want to explore, and one is direct response. The other is indirect response. So most people focus only on direct response. They're only thinking about buy nows, come ins, call to actions, do this, do that. It's good and it's important. Sale now. Direct response. Indirect response is a little bit more based in brand awareness. It's getting the imaging out there. It's getting the taglines out there. It's getting the brand out there. When you see a Skittles ad and it says, taste the rainbow fruit flavors, or Airbnb, belong anywhere. That's not direct response. It's an indirect response ad. Both are very important, and they're just getting more and more important. If you spend too much time with direct response, you're going to lose the audience. And if you do too much indirect response, then usually you're not asking people to do enough stuff. The trick becomes putting the right thing in the right place. For instance, Airbnb's Belong Anywhere campaign, that mostly runs on TV. That's a TV commercial. So they're using their indirect response for TV media buy placement, and then they're using their direct response for Google Ads search and display, let's say. The other thing to consider is paid versus organic. Both very important. You can't outspend bad creative. If you're running only paid ads, you think we need to put more money into paid ads, it may not work. Organic allows you to reach a wide audience, to test creative, to put stuff up and see, does this work? Do people like it? And then you can use it as paid. Both should work together. Both should be bringing people into your funnel at various places, and you cannot focus on just one anymore. It will not work. Now, one little test I like to run creative by is called a VRIN score. VRIN stands for valuable. What you're putting out, whether it's paid or organic, it should be valuable. And by valuable, what really that means is that it provides some element of transformation to somebody. It provides some thought, some idea, some emotion, something that says, oh, that's interesting, or I had never thought of that, or oh, that gave me a good feeling even, or that's a pretty picture. Anything that someone would feel they value. And maybe it's a discount code. Maybe they're like, hey, I really wanted that 20% off. That would be something valuable to somebody. The R is for rare. When you look at your creative and your advertising, is it rare? Like, is it something that people see all the time? I was speaking to someone the other day about their organic, and I was looking at their Instagram, and I mean, it's good, it's valuable, but it's not very rare. You could just Google an image of that and then see hundreds of quotes and pictures exactly like it, which is one of the reasons why traditional stock images don't perform as well anymore, because they're not very rare. They're incredibly common. I stands for immutable. This is the question of whether or not stuff changes over time and how much it changes. You want to be communicating ideas that are bigger than the business. You want to be communicating ideas whenever possible. Obviously, you can't do this in everything, and that's why these are scales. You may not hit 100 on every single level, but you want to be putting out creative that hits ideas and feelings and thoughts that don't just change all the time. Like for Coca-Cola with the happiness, that's something that is fundamental. They are using immutable concepts to tell their story, and you want to make sure that that creative is following a through line. You don't want to be like talking about one thing over here, and then all of a sudden the brand totally changes its mind about something fundamental to its being. Obviously, we see that with personal brands sometimes, and either it works out for them or it doesn't. But you want to make sure that there is an unchanging nature to the themes and truths of what you are communicating in your advertising content. And lastly, N stands for non-replaceable. Similar to rare, but non-replaceable just means like, could someone else literally just do the exact same thing? You know, maybe it's valuable, maybe it was rare, maybe it's also immutable, but could another brand say it and do it the exact same way? Exactly? Because if so, then I would recommend to up the non-replaceable factor of your advertising. From a personal brand perspective, this is a bit easier because as a person, you are inherently non-replaceable as long as you're tapping into your deep authenticity. But as a business brand, it can be tempting to do exactly what somebody else is doing. Oh, this worked for them. Look at this ad. It worked for them. They took a picture of their whole team in front of their headquarters jumping, and we're going to do the exact same thing. Fine, cool, it works. Is it rare? Not really. Is it immutable? Yes. Is it valuable? Kind of. Is it non-replaceable? It depends. If someone literally could do the exact same thing, like if your whole team looks the exact same, then it's probably replaceable. If your team's super diverse and maybe you do something slightly funny and maybe there's a caption underneath it that's like only you guys could think of that, it becomes more non-replaceable. So the advertising is the messaging and images that go into the marketing strategy that help communicate the brand. So let me get to the last optimization, which is sales. Now, some companies, the heavy lift is going to come from the advertising and the marketing strategy and the brand. You could theoretically stop there in some spaces because sales is mostly covered because they're buying directly on a website in some cases, in which case your copywriting and your direct response marketing can do that sales lift. But for a lot of businesses, sales goes way beyond someone just clicking a button on a website. It's your customer service. It's how you treat people. If you own a restaurant, it's how you treat people when they're in there. It's how you treat staff. It's staff talking about the company to other people. It is literally direct sales conversations sometimes, whether that's over the phone, over chat. Maybe you have multiple follow-ups. Maybe you have a long sales cycle. Maybe you have a short sales cycle. So the things that I like to look at from a sales perspective when optimizing this in a company, if it is something that is directly going to increase revenue and profitability. One, we look at price and packaging. So this is like, how are you actually pricing stuff? As I said, kind of price is a marketing thing because you can look at the market to figure out where your price point fits, but it's also a sales thing because sometimes you need to present multiple prices. Sometimes if you package stuff up the right way, you're going to increase average order value, which is going to increase your overall profitability. These things impact people's brains and impact how they view what they're buying. This is why software companies have good, better, best. This is why at the video agency, we tend to present 3 prices as well. How we perceive price impacts whether people buy, and how we perceive packaging because of price anchoring also impacts how people buy. The other thing to keep in mind is that most businesses nowadays need to have a somatic selling model. A somatic selling model is a questions-based selling strategy. It is an uncovering of the other person's value systems, the other person's desires, and then providing only the parts that they need in the selling conversation. Now, this was taught to me at Apple. It wasn't called this at the time but it has gotten much more popular as the landscape of sales has changed. And what they taught us at Apple was that because the computer can do so many things, when someone comes in to buy a computer, the most important thing is that we talk to them. And we ask them questions about what they want and why they want it. And then when you talk about the computer, you talk about those things. So if I spoke to somebody and they told me that they just had a grandkid and the reason that they're looking at a computer is because they want to have all their pictures together, I'm going to show them the Photos app. If I show them everything on the computer, it is going to overwhelm them. It'll be way too much information and they will not buy. So a somatic selling model allows you to only present the parts that are most important, only only present the parts that are most valuable, and at times customize a service specifically for that person. Now, I think doing customization for everybody is usually too much work, but there are some industries where you will still need to do that. But you can give the feeling of something custom without having to customize, and that is at the heart of somatic selling. So these are the areas that you need to optimize. Again, I am all about how do you do it simple, how do you do it efficient, how do you create brand strategies and stories that empower your marketing and advertising so that it's more clear. I love working as a fractional creative director with people. That's a lot of the work that I do, or running ads, looking at your brand messaging, helping you come up with the story, helping you make a marketing funnel that works for you specifically, and then building both advertising and sales mechanics that work for the size of your team. Because again, it's not like you're trying to be Apple all the time or you're trying to be Nike, but something that works for you. I'm a true believer in not doing more than you need to do. This is about how do you get more with less effort. How do you keep things clear and streamlined and communicated through your team so that you can scale in a way to your desired point in a way that is not overly stressful? And I would love to help you do that more. So feel free, if you want to grab a copy, I've got a mini course called Brand Breakthrough. It's $100. You can buy it on this page. Or if you're watching this video on the school page or just generally want to learn more about working one-to-one, I have a consulting program called the Strategy Lab, and I will help you or help your team make these optimizations in your business. And I cannot wait to do that. Have an incredible day, and cheers to your growth.